Sometimes the deepest pain hides behind the quietest faces. And sometimes one small act of kindness can uncover truth that changes everything. This is the story of a man who wanted to die alone until a nurse held his hand and heard the confession he'd been hiding for 40 years. It was a cold evening at St. Mary's Hospital. The hallways were quiet, the fluorescent lights humming softly. Nurse Emily Carter was finishing her rounds, exhausted, but still gentle as ever. She checked room after room until she reached room 213. Inside was a man who never wanted to be touched, spoken to, or even looked at for too long. His name was George Milton, 81 years old. No visitors, no family listed. His medical chart simply read, terminal lung failure. When Emily entered the room, George turned his head away. "Don't bother," he said hoarsely. "I don't need anyone." But Emily didn't leave. She smiled softly and replied, "Mr. Milton, everyone needs someone." Every nurse had tried to care for George, but he refused help from all of them. He barely ate, barely spoke. He just stared out the window, waiting for something, or maybe someone. Emily noticed something strange, though. Every night, around 9 p.m., George would whisper a name under his breath. It sounded like Tommy. At first, she thought maybe it was a son or a friend. But when she checked his records, there was no Tommy listed anywhere. The name haunted her. She wanted to know, who was this Tommy that George couldn't forget? One stormy night, the rain pounded against the windows that George's condition had worsened. His breathing was shallow, his skin pale. Emily sat beside him, holding his frail hand as the machines beeped slowly. He whispered, "Why are you still here?" Emily smiled gently. "Because you shouldn't have to leave this world alone." A long silence followed, and then tears began to fall down George's face. He said, almost trembling, "I did something terrible." Emily leaned in closer. "What do you mean?" George's eyes filled with regret. "I need to tell someone before I go," he said, "something I've hidden all my life." Emily squeezed his hand and whispered, "You can tell me, George. I'm listening." And then he confessed, "When I was a young man, I had a son. His name was Tommy." His voice broke. He was just 8 years old, and he loved building toy airplanes with me. Emily's eyes softened. "What happened to him?" George closed his eyes, fighting back tears. "One day, I came home drunk. I yelled at him for breaking one of my model planes. He tried to apologize, but I was angry that I told him to get out. He ran away that night, and he never came back." Emily's heart sank. She could barely hold back her own tears. George continued, "They found his body 2 days later near the train tracks. His lips trembled. They said it was an accident, but I know it was because of me." He looked at Emily with eyes full of pain. "I've been living with that guilt ever since. That's why I never wanted anyone around. I don't deserve kindness." Emily wiped her tears and took a deep breath. "George," she said softly, "you made a mistake, a terrible one, but you've punished yourself long enough." He shook his head weakly. "No, I don't deserve forgiveness." Emily leaned closer. "Maybe not from yourself, but maybe from Tommy, if he could see you right now. For the first time in years." George smiled faintly. "He used to say he'd build a plane big enough to fly us to the moon," he whispered. Emily smiled through tears. "Then maybe he's waiting for you up there." The next morning, George's condition took a turn for the worse. The doctors said he might not make it through the night. Emily sat beside him again, holding his hand just like before. She told him stories about forgiveness, about peace, about how love doesn't die, even when people do. George whispered, "I wish I could tell him I'm sorry." Emily said softly, "Then tell him now. Close your eyes and say it. He's listening." George's breathing slowed. He whispered one last time, "Tommy, I'm sorry, son." And with a faint smile, he took his last breath. The next morning, when Emily came to clean up his things, she found a small, dusty box under his bed. Inside was an old toy airplane, broken on one wing, and underneath it, a faded photo of a little boy with bright eyes, and a wide smile on the back of the photo in shaky handwriting were the words, "Fly high, Dad. I'll always love you." Emily pressed the photo to her chest and whispered, "He forgave you, George. He always did." Weeks later, Emily was finishing another late-night shift when she saw a young boy sitting in the waiting room, holding a toy airplane. She smiled and said, "That's a nice plane you've got." The boy grinned. "It was my grandpa's. My mom said he used to build them with my Uncle Tommy before he passed." Emily froze. The boy's name tag read Milton. She gasped softly. "Wait, what's your grandpa's name?" He smiled brightly. "George Milton. He died a few weeks ago." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She knelt down and whispered, "He loved you very much, you know that?" The boy nodded proudly. "Mom says he wasn't perfect, but he tried to be better." As the boy ran off to his mother, Emily looked up at the night sky through the hospital window. The stars shimmered softly, like tiny planes flying across the heavens. She whispered, "Fly high, George. Fly high, Tommy. You're finally together." And for the first time, she felt peace. Sometimes people carry so heavy, they forget how to live. They isolate themselves, thinking they don't deserve forgiveness. But the truth is, no one's beyond redemption. One small act of kindness, one hand held in the dark, can bring light back into a life lost to regret. So if you're listening to this right now and you're holding on to guilt, pain, or regret, remember this story. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It heals it. And sometimes all it takes is someone willing to stay when everyone else walks away. This story is dedicated to anyone who's ever needed a second chance, or given one, because sometimes that's all it takes to change a life. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to share it. You never know who might need to hear it tonight.